Everybody. Thank you for coming. Welcome to the Together Women Rise October webinar. So today we're going to be exploring how education and menstrual health are helping Maasai girls in rural Kenya stay in school and shape their own futures. If you haven't met me before, I am Sarah Powers, the communications coordinator with Together Women Rise, and I will be your moderator for tonight. If this is your first Rise event or if you're a returning member, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we are absolutely thrilled to have you with us. And if this is your first time meeting us, welcome. We are a powerful community of women and allies dedicated to achieving global gender equality. Together, we learn about and advocate for gender equality issues. We give grants to organizations that empower women and girls in low-income communities in the global South. And we build community to forge meaningful connections with each other and with women around the world. Our model is collective giving based. By harnessing the power of coming together, all of our contributions are valued and can make a powerful impact. And if you're interested in becoming a member, make a donation to support our mission, please visit our website at togetherwomenrise.org. So before we get started with our wonderful guests, I want to walk you through a couple Zoom reminders. The first is please keep yourself on mute while our speakers are presenting. There will be a Q&A session after our speakers have an opportunity to present with me. And then please enter your questions in the chat function. We'll do our best to get to them as best we can as time allows. And then if you are interested in closed caption features, it's at the bottom on the Zoom toolbar. Just click on show captions in your language of choice. All right, so we're going to turn now to our program for the evening. At these monthly webinars, you have the opportunity to learn about the challenges and issues faced by women and girls in low-income communities in the global South, as well as the important work that we together are in our RISE community are funding through our grants program. So first, Wendy's going to play a short video about our grantee for the night, and we're going to have a conversation with our guest speakers. So Dr. Kayce Anderson, who's Executive Director, and Kate Lapides, Director of the Communications at For the Good. So I have a video.
When Soyan Karia turned 11 years old, her grandmother started showing up at her 4th grade classroom twice a week to take her out of school because she felt it was time for Soyan to undergo the cut and get married. Each time she did so, Soyan's stepmother, Nancy, would march over to pick up Soyan and return her to the classroom the next day. This battle over the futures of girls like Soyan is common in the rural regions of southern Kenya, where For the Good works. Remote, populated primarily by pastoral Maasai, many families struggle with poverty and few have access to water, sanitation, or transportation. Most must spend hours daily working to gather water and firewood, with the bulk of this falling on the girls. For centuries, in this context, the most reliable path to stability for Maasai women has been through marriage to an established older man. Generations of cultural tradition and survival wisdom has taught grandmothers like Soyan's that, as a favorite grandchild, Soyan's future would be most secure if she followed the same traditional path of arranged early marriage that has served Maasai women for generations. Around the world, 122 million girls are out of school. This figure increases dramatically at the upper secondary level. Across sub-Saharan Africa, 70% of girls complete school at the primary level, but only 27% complete upper secondary level. And the gaps become even starker in marginalized and rural areas and counties affected by conflict and violence. And this is critical because a secondary education is where the benefits for girls become most significant and far-reaching, improving their health and earning potential, protecting them against early marriages, and opening up opportunities for them to make their own life choices and reach their fullest potential. Naikarra County, the region of southern Kenya For the Good expanded to in 2023, is one of the rural regions where this gap is even starker. A mere 17.5% of girls in Naikarra have completed primary school, and just 11% have completed secondary. For the Good works to change this inequality by opening affordable day schools where none exists. We work to make these schools safer and more inclusive for girls by promoting female teachers and curating literacy content, celebrating girls into ongoing program using rituals to bring thousands of interactive, student-centered lessons to classroom in remote offline schools that we partner with. Critically, For the Good also engages a team of young Maasai lady volunteers, our Team Angaza, to identify and enroll out-of-school girls and empower them with health and rights education. Each of our Team Angaza are local to the communities in which they work and possess deep understanding of the cultural nuances of situations like Soyan's. This shared experience is precisely what makes our approach so effective. By recognizing the love and protective intentions behind actions like those of Soyan's grandmother, Team Angaza can engage in respectful dialogue that honors fathers and grandparents' concern while opening their minds to new possibilities for their daughters and sharing new understandings of girls' and women's rights. As secondary school graduates themselves who are increasingly taking a leadership role in their communities, Team Angaza also serve as powerful role models to change local hearts and minds on the value of a daughter. In 2024, 13 Team Angaza across the Loita region and 4 Team Angaza across Naikarra enrolled 1,092 out-of-school children. They also taught culturally sensitive SRHR education to over 1,000 girls and addressed period poverty by distributing pads to 1,000 girls across the region. Together Women Rise's featured grant will serve as a transformative catalyst for Team Angaza's work across Naikarra. With critical funding, we can more than double our Team Angaza presence to mirror our program in Loita, expanding from our current 4 interns to a network of 10 trained Maasai advocates who can reach even the most remote communities. We can expand our comprehensive SRHR education programs to reach an additional 2,000 girls. We can develop targeted programs for engaging fathers and grandmothers in conversations about the economic and social benefits of girls' education, and provide sustainable solution to period poverty through continued distribution of reusable sanitary products. The impact will be exponential. Each Team Angaza can help dozens of girls like Soyan transition from vulnerability to empowerment. Using the culturally sensitive approach of our local Maasai advocates, we anticipate reaching hundreds more at-risk girls before they are removed from school, creating a new generation of educated Maasai women who maintain their cultural identity while gaining the tools to determine their own future. Today, Soyan is in 6th grade and thriving. Her aspirations to become a teacher grow stronger through each challenge overcome. Her grandmother, while still holding traditional values, has begun to see the possibilities of security through education. This transformation in perspective represents the heart of For the Good's work, not replacing cultural values, but expanding them to embrace new possibilities for Maasai girls.
We are strong and beautiful ladies.
Thank you. And now we're going to introduce and welcome to our speakers for the evening. So we have Dr. Kayce Anderson and Kate Lapides from For the Good. And Dr. Anderson is the executive director and co-founder for the organization. She leads efforts to expand educational opportunities for girls in rural Kenya. She has a background in ecology and humanitarian work and is a passionate advocate for ensuring that every girl has the tools, dignity, and agency to stay in school. Joining her is Kate Lapides, Director of Communications with For the Good. With decades of experience as a photojournalist and a storyteller for international NGOs, Kate now documents the organization's work with Maasai communities, leads strategic communications, and uses participatory media to amplify girls' voices and drive community change. So together, Kayce and Kate work to break down the barriers that keep Maasai girls from accessing education and to build brighter futures rooted in dignity, agency, and opportunity. We're so glad to have both of you with us tonight. After our Q&A session, we will open the floor for an audience question. So please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. And afterwards, Wendy will be reading them out to everyone to hear. All right. So our first question. for both of you, whoever wants to take this question, Kayce or Kate, what are some of the daily realities for Maasai girls in rural Kenya who are trying to go to school? We saw a bit from the video, but I'd love to hear more about it. If you could explain to us.
Um, sure. Kate and I are just going to kind of take turns on
Yeah,
some.
sounds great.
I'll go ahead and take this one. Yeah, so daily realities for the Maasai girls. There's a number of challenges, a lot of challenges before they can even walk through the doors of a school. First, the fathers really control the purse strings of the home. And unfortunately, many fathers aren't really willing to pay for their children, especially their girls, to go to school. So they end up just staying at home and they never make it. If they do go to school, children in general and girls in particular have a really long list of household responsibilities. Before they go to school, they have to collect firewood, collect water, milk cows, and these are all the responsibilities of the girl child. They often live very far from the school, so of course, they're walking everywhere to school, and it's quite often miles and miles, 10 miles away. And you can imagine for a very young child, that distance feels extremely long. And so they, many families, many children have to wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning just to make it to school on time. In fact, Christine, who works with us, that was her story. She had to wake up and leave the house by 4:30 just to make it. So the distance affects both, but the girls are especially vulnerable over that distance. And then once girls reach the age of menstruation, accessing menstrual hygiene supplies is very difficult. And around that same time is often when they're arranged to be married. And at that point, when they become married, education stops. And then finally, Narok County, where we work, has the highest teen pregnancy rate in all of Kenya at 40%. And we see pregnancies in 6th grade, more commonly in 7th, 8th, 9th grade. And often we can work with parents to discourage them from marrying their daughter off when she gets pregnant. And then if we can do that, and we can convince the mother to care for the baby while her daughter's at school, then we can often get those girls back in school. But in short, there's a lot of barriers unfortunately, for the girl child in Maasai land.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, we've hear from other grantees as well, like how impactful, like, the distance from school is, or like young girls being responsible for household chores and child marriage. And we know that this is like really difficult for a lot of people, like all over the world. So we know it's an ongoing issue. So we're wonderful to hear that your organization is trying to work with families on that. So we appreciate that. So we've learned that many of these challenges are not just about the distances to school and whatnot. We're also looking at things like poverty, gender expectations, as you touched on, other traditions. How does For the Good help families and communities overcome those barriers so the schools can stay in school? I know we touched a bit about like how the fathers are holding the purse strings, and I've seen like a bit in the video that like other family members involved, but can you kind of go more into the families and the communities and how they're helping to overcome those barriers and how you're working with them too?
Yeah. So the role of our team on Gaza is really to go door to door the families that have children that are not enrolled in school. And first, when we approach them, we listen. That's their primary role: listen before they speak. And then usually the families have valid reasons for not sending their children to school, valid for them and their experience and their context. So usually it boils down to school fees. And as I said, the fathers are usually the ones that are controlling that and determining whether their daughters can go to school. And the school fees really are quite minimal. They're, even by their standard, it's not much. And it's really not that they're so destitute for most families that they can't afford those fees. It's more that the fathers don't want to sell one of their animals to pay for the school fees. The Maasai are pastoral, and their wealth is really held in their livestock and their goats and sheep and cows. And it's really difficult for a Maasai man to sell an animal, to send a daughter to school. So it's taxing on them, like emotionally taxing on them. Additionally, a daughter's value is really in what she might fetch as a bride price, which is usually, again, given in livestock. And when she's married off, her value as an individual is transferred to the husband's family. A son, on the other hand, his value is based on what he might earn through work, and his value is considered to stay within his family. So when a girl is educated and begins to make good income, the daughters often give back more to their parents than the sons do. So when talking to the fathers about this, it's often a conversation around economics, frankly. Is it worth selling a goat to send your daughter to school? The fathers need convincing, the mothers usually don't need any convincing. It's usually a pretty easy question for them. And then comes in the reason for these local day schools, which we also work with the communities to start. They're really so important because local day school is about a quarter to a fifth of the cost of a boarding school that they have to travel to. So our day schools have made it easy and economically sensible to send their daughters to school. So in short, the fathers are seeing that their return on investment for sending their daughter to an affordable day school is higher than marrying them off when they're young. If that makes sense. For usually, it's convincing the fathers, it's not convincing the mothers, and that conversation is around the economics of sending their daughters, because that seems to them to be the greatest barrier.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you. That is really eye-opening too, understanding that like Maasai are very pastoral, and like I can understand too with like animals, they can produce, milk continuously and things like that too. So it is interesting seeing like additional layers when thinking about like the Maasai community and coming down to economics, even if the mother is supportive, like, yeah, it's a hard conversation I imagine to have. Um, so one of the things that was really incredible about your organization is relying on other young Maasai women for Team Angaza to help lead this work. And can you share a bit about how the women are making a difference and what it means for the girls to see role models from their own community and the kind of work that they're doing on the ground?
I'm going to jump in and take this one. So there's a quote that's attributed to Marian Wright Edelman that speaks about the power not just of role models, but role models who look like you do, and representation that we really love. That's when you see it, you can be it. And I think that quote really sums up for us what it means for girls when they see our Team Angaza in their communities, acting as leaders, influencing parents, really having an impact in their area. Especially in cultures that are as deeply patriarchal as the Maasai cultures and the communities that we work in are. Their role just being in those communities and doing their work and being visible makes a really powerful difference. I think one example that really illustrates how powerful this is we have quite a few really powerhouse Team Angaza that are doing especially impactful work. And one of them is Nasarian. She works in a pretty key central community called Entasacra. She's been a volunteer with us for several years now. And she first trained in 2022. And really just about a month after undergoing that training, We teach them basic skills and organizing, as well as listening, as Kayce mentioned, and reflective listening to parents. And she organized her village. She recognized the need that many mothers weren't sending their children to school to, kindergarten and first grade. The equivalent is an ECD in Kenya. And they weren't sending their children to start school until they were 8 or 9 years old. And so if they're starting at that age, they're already so far off the back, and it creates quite a few problems later on as girls reach puberty at a much younger grade and tend to fall off out of school. And so she organized them. She recognized they had a local church space that wasn't being used Monday through Friday, and organized her community basically to repurpose that into a preschool for the local children. So that was 3 years ago now. That school is now serving over 100 children on a daily basis. And not only that, but after starting that first school, Nassarian recognized a neighboring community that also needed a school and helped organize that community to create their own school as well. And now, this past year, I was just there a few weeks ago, she's organizing her local community to replace their local church and actually build a dedicated building that will serve, throughout time now as the local preschool for their children. And in addition to that, we're doing health trainings with our team in Gaza now. She shares health information with girls and women. And I think in addition to being role models to girls, is so important. One thing that's amazing is that Nassarian is now actually respected by the men in her community. And they ask her to be included in community decision-making about really important issues that affect the whole community, such as a recent land demarcation issue that's really having huge impacts across Loida. So she's seen not just by girls, but by men and leaders and other people across the entire community now as a leader, which is a huge culture shift in the communities we work. So I would say when girls in our communities see Team Angaza, who are all local Maasai women to the communities they work, who are secondary school graduates, stepping up to make change, it's a huge and powerful role model for them.
Yeah, that's incredible. Like just to hear the ripple effect they're having with the preschools, and also that she's getting to weigh in on land demarcation issues, and the men are asking for her to be a leader in the community. That's wonderful to see. And I imagine that helps contribute with the overall shift for other future generations of girls too, as men are seeing more and more women being leaders. And it's wonderful to know that they're relying on them too. And there's a change of heart that's happening. So it's excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So you've kind of touched on this a bit. And so we're kind of wondering, as you're seeing these shifts, with Nazarian and stuff like that, are you seeing other fathers and brothers and other family members changing their minds? You talked a bit about in the video, I think, a grandmother who was, for instance, bringing her grandchild. Can you talk a bit about how you've, in other ways that you've seen community mindset shift or family members shift, especially some of the older generations that might still be contributing to the mindset or engaging in having their children married or undergoing FGM and those types of things?
Yeah. There's an individual story that I'm going to save for a later question because I
Yeah.
think it answers it a bit better. And I'm going to use Christine, who Kayce mentioned earlier, I think as an example of how incredibly powerful this change can be across both fathers and grandmothers and communities over, really just a period of a few years to a generation. Christine is a supervisor for the region that the Together Women Rise grant is supporting, Naikarra. And Naikarra is more traditional and has a less overall education than the first county we worked in Loida. Christine's story herself is really remarkable. In fact, she was featured in a TEDx video last year that I'll share a link to in the chat if people want to review it. It's about a 6-minute video and really powerful. To briefly summarize it, she had a child in 6th grade from a forced encounter that wasn't her choice. And after she had that child, her father arranged for her marriage. She refused because she wanted to stay in school and ran away. And in Maasai culture, defying your father that way is really unacceptable. And so not only did she pursue her own education by just various means, really struggling all the way through university level. She has a bachelor's degree. She, during that time, once she was in college, she went back to that community and rescued 3 more girls, including her younger sister, from arranged early marriage. And for all those efforts, she was really exiled from her community, and to the level that when she would go back during school holidays, a lot of the community would literally turn their backs to her and not engage with her. So, as it happens, Christine's home community where all this happened is in Older Kayce, which is in Naikarra, which is the expansion that Together Women Rise is funding. And she's a very powerful and one of our more senior staff. So we asked her to, and because she knows the region, we asked her to lead our program there, and she's now a supervisor there. So she's now working in the very same community that not so many years ago, everybody was shunning her. But now she's 28, and her community on a daily basis sees her in a leadership role, engaging with school leadership, with political leadership, with cultural leadership to start our new school programs. She engages with people at all levels. She got married 2 years ago at age 27. It was a marriage out of love with a childhood friend to Joseph, who's a nurse. The marriage is respectful and equal. They just had their own first child together by choice a year ago. And together they also take care of many other children in need in the community. So now many of the same people who once turned their backs on Christine are now explicitly coming out and saying they see her as a role model, and they want their children, and especially their daughters, to grow up to be just like her. So I think Christine's story for us, it really, I don't think there's many that offer such like a concrete and powerful example of the way that choosing to, support one girl's education throughout all those barriers that Kayce mentioned, because those all existed really exponentially in Christine's case. Her family situation was really bad, and ultimately ripple out to begin shifting things across an entire community over the space really of like 10 years. So many hearts and minds have changed about the value of what a daughter's education can be.
Well, and like to hear Christine's story too, like that she was shunned by the community, but came back, and like despite being continually to be shunned, but like she's still going back, and finally the community starting to see her as a positive and wanting their daughters to be like her. That's wonderful. I know you just mentioned that you were thinking of holding a story about another girl. Was that the story you wanted to share, or was there another story? Because we love hearing these stories about like Soyeon from the video and Christine and Asarian. So if you have any more, otherwise, if that was the one that you were thinking of, like I can pop back to the next question.
It was, there's a similar question that you had about hearing about Soyan, and then was there other stories, right,
Mhm.
that illustrate? Is that what you want to hear now?
Yep. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so I was actually just in Kenya I've just returned a few weeks ago. And so I think another powerful story on an individual level was a year ago, I met a young girl named Sianoi. She was just completing 7th grade, which at the time, the Kenyan school structure is changing a bit, but was the transition to secondary school. She was the 4th daughter in her family. Her father is elderly, very traditional, and also has a drinking problem. And he had married off all the CNOI's 3 eldest sisters, excuse me. And CNOI desperately wanted to go on to secondary school. But at the time, there was no affordable day secondary option near her home. So their only option was to go to a boarding school, which was way beyond the family's means, even if the father had wanted to support her to go. And so she was really anxious because her father was planning to marry her off as well. fortunately, because we were in the process of opening a day secondary school there near her village, one of our staff, Janet Tarakoy, and one of our team on Gaza in the area visited with Sinoy's father and explained about the new school we were opening and how the cost was significantly less than a boarding school. And he agreed to basically let her do a trial period of a semester. But he was pretty reluctant and resistant. And so I actually, when I was there a few weeks ago, he came by our office, not once, but 2 times to thank us for starting the day secondary school and just make sure it was going to continue to stay open and that Sinoy could continue to stay there. And so, I think, and he was humble. And when he had been at the home when I visited them the year prior, and he wouldn't really even engage with me and the staff because he wasn't happy that we were trying to encourage the family to not marry Sinoy and to take her to school instead. So like that's a story to me that really illustrates, one of the core beliefs underlying our work is that like most people in the communities where we work, they really have so much intelligence and so much capacity to solve the challenges they face. It's just sometimes they need a little additional information or new knowledge or some encouragement or just a tiny bit of support, like in the form of a cheaper day secondary school, right, that she can go to create that change that they really ultimately hope for their children. Because the early marriages sound like such a bad thing, but really parents are often also motivated by trying to ensure their daughter's security is a huge reason why those marriages happen as well. So it's just a shift in understanding about how to gain that security. And we see that happen on this individual level, like with Sinoy's father. And now he even went as far as to last year, he took the own initiative to research government scholarships that might be available for Sinoy to continue. So to me, that's a really powerful story that speaks to that change as well.
Oh, that's so awesome. It's wonderful to hear that like he not only came around, but now is like very grateful and looking into ways to continue her education. And one of the things that I was really struck by all of our organizations, but like in particular, the focus that you put on coming from like an asset-based point of understanding that like yes, some of these practices are very harmful for the girls, but understanding that a lot of the parents want security for their kids and the grandparents do too. And so just like kind of working with that and understanding like the real reason behind some of these practices and like feels like a much more like helpful approach, it seems like, especially working with like Team on Gaza, that they're able to like understand that like it's coming from a place of wanting security for their daughters, and maybe there's a better alternative that everybody can benefit from. So that's wonderful to hear, and how impactful the schools have been.
Yeah.
So yeah, um we've been really honored to support this project. And from your perspective, you talked briefly that we're going to be supporting a new project in Naikarra. Is the new one that you're expanding in? Can you talk a bit more about that and like how this is making that work possible, and kind of like what the project and the grant funding will go towards this upcoming year and the years beyond?
Yeah, absolutely. And first, I want to thank Together Women Rise for the support. We're extremely proud to be a partner with you guys as well. So with the support of Together Women Rise, we've hired an additional 15 Team on Gaza in Naikarra. So we're about equal. We've surpassed the number of Team in Gaza that we have in Loita, the first area where we worked. And we're still hoping to hire potentially 2 to 3 more. It's a bigger region, more remote, and more children out of school. So we've hired them just in the last, we've done it kind of in phases, but just in the last couple of months, they've already enrolled over 400 children. They're a super motivated, smart group of young ladies. And additionally, and this is super cool. Because of the Together Women Rise grant and our expansion into Naikarra and our hire of these women, we were granted a second grant to do to work with them to train them around participatory video, which is a super powerful tool, which will give the girls more power to tell their stories and reach some of the most marginalized girls in the region. So we're going to be focusing on girls that have dropped out of school and become pregnant. Those girls often just kind of fall into the shadows, and you never hear from them. So we're going to really work on bringing them together, create community for them, and highlight their stories and their challenges. And then also, it will be working with girls when they come back from secondary school. They're most vulnerable to pregnancy when they're back on holiday. So we're going to engage them in the participatory video. And this is all done with our team on Gaza, who are a result of this grant. So I can say that this grant has been amazing for us, but it is a complete game changer for Naikarra and this whole area.
Thank you. And it's incredible to hear that you've been able to like expand that now into so much more and helping girls who are falling through the cracks with pregnancy too. That like that's yeah, it's wonderful to hear. And we love to see you succeeding. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes. Thank
So
you.
just a quick plug, we're gonna be going to audience questions shortly. We've got one more question for our speakers, but if you have questions that you've been thinking about, please put them in the chat and we'll read them out soon. But our final question for the program before we get to audience questions is, as you're thinking about this next generation of girls, what is giving you the most hope? And what are you dreaming of as a possibility for everybody in the future, for your organization, but also the girls and the communities that you're working with?
So Kate and I are going to share this question. Kate, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first? Oh, I think you're muted, Kate. I'll go first since you're muted.
Okay, I'm good. I'll go. You can.
Okay, go for
it. Okay. So many things give me hope, first of all, but I think one that gives me the most hope is actually our team on Gaza and our female staff. I think you saw that all of our staff except for one is female, and all of our team on nearly 30 team on Gaza are female, and they're all local to the communities they work, and it really shows us. I also want to say, having just returned there, it's such a visceral reminder of how much they go through every day, even to get the simplest thing done sometimes, because travel is really difficult and there isn't network. And so, it's just everything is like logarithmically hard, even sometimes to communicate. And they're so passionate and resilient about doing this work. And given just, this, we give them knowledge and we support them to step into leadership roles in their communities and teach them, and then give them some free rein. And it's amazing, like the things that they spark, like Nasserians, the change Nasserians sparked. We see that again and again. And so just time and again, they show us, just with a little bit of support, how much change they can help create in their communities. And the other piece I love, and I think Kayce's going to take the baton from here, is one of our graduates from our first cohort. Her name's Evelyn Sanow. She started a women's collective in her community, and going from where her community was at when we started with her in 2019, I think, or 2020, and where they're at now is where Kayce's going to, I think, wrap this up.
Yeah, so Evelyn was among our first cohort in 2019 of our team on Gaza. We started with 5 team on Gaza, and she's a super feisty young woman and enrolled hundreds of children. She was incredibly good at what she did. And at the end of 2 to 3 years, then we pay for them to go on and get tertiary education. And so she's back in her community. And now she started this women's collective that Kate referred to that is raising money to send their daughters to college. And this area that she lives in and that she works in was particularly difficult. There were so many unenrolled children, and most of them weren't even making it to 6th grade. So now they're talking about sending their daughters to college. Like when I heard about this a couple of weeks ago, I was completely floored. Just the leap from keeping them in school just to finish primary school and then getting them into secondary school. And then in a matter of 5 years, now they're raising money for themselves to send their daughters to college. So that gives me so much hope. Like I'm so proud of her and her work and inspired by them. And it gives me so much hope.
That's so incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that like as we're all in these fields, like there's a lot of stories of challenging things in the world right now. So it's always really exciting to actually see like how much progress and how these little sparks are just growing. And it's just incredible to hear that in a matter of like 5 years, like you said, going from getting girls and keeping them in primary school to secondary school to then like turning around and wanting them to go to college and talking about the ripple effect it's having in the communities. Like it's really incredible. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's really touching. We're gonna shift now to audience questions. So I'm gonna have Wendy please read out the questions that we have from the audience, and then we'll try to get to as many as we can before we wrap up. So thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. First question is about the Maasai communities that the one of our members is asking if these are settled villages that you're working in. Are most of the Maasai girls now in villages rather than nomadic situations? And is there any way to extend what you're doing to the ones that are still in mobile communities?
So as we speak, the area where we work and really most of this region is undergoing a pretty dramatic change in land. So they just in the last year, they have demarcated their land, which has been a real challenge because it will completely change their lifestyle. You know, they require big ranges to move their livestock. And now with land demarcation, they've been given 10 to 13 acre parcels. So they are now, you know, there are some regions, not in the area where we work, further up in Samburu, where they are more semi-nomadic. But unfortunately, in the region where we work, they've just they're undergoing, it's still shaking out how it will happen. The good thing that came out of this is for the first time in Maasai or Kenyan history, women were given land rights when they were tiled out in Loita, which has, you know, it's changed everything for them in really positive ways. But to get back to your question, most of them are in the process because of this. A lot of them are having to move to different parts where they were given parcels. So there is a shuffle right now, and we're responding to that because there's now needs for schools in places that there weren't previously because the community has shifted. They've shifted from more of a communal living type, you know, neighborhood where they live among extended family to now, you know, a mother and father and their children will live on their own 13 acres. So the dynamics are changing and we're trying to respond to that. But for the most part, they're not living in a semi-nomadic lifestyle anymore.
Thank you. Kind of a similar question of whether or not your organization is thinking of expanding into other areas. Someone's asking specifically, is there an opportunity to extend the work you do to Tanzania?
You know, so Potentially. So the Maasai, I mean, I feel like we've really come, over the years, come to understand how to work with this tribe. Now, certainly we could use our models work elsewhere, but our work is really right on the border. I mean, in fact, when we're there, like I get a message on my phone, welcome to Tanzania, because we're right on the border. So really, it wouldn't be much of a leap at all to work on that side of a political border. We're working with the same people. In fact, many of the children that come to the schools that we've built are walking over from Tanzania. So it's not a leap at all. And it wouldn't be a big shift culturally or anything like that. That said, we have no plans of, of doing that. There is still a lot of work in Kenya, but we absolutely wouldn't like if there was an opportunity and we had kind of an entry, that's kind of one of the, an important piece of it, then yeah, we'd certainly consider it.
No pressure, just, you're doing great.
Just throwing it out there.
So Lacey, your question is interesting. She works at an all-boys Catholic prep middle high school in Massachusetts. And she's wondering how her school can help support or what could be said to help the girls in Kenya. So I'm putting a little plug for Together Women Rise first. And I'm going to say, Lacey, we would love to have the first Together Women Rise chapter of prep school boys ever. And they could learn about gender equality issues in different projects every month in different parts of the world. So that's my little plug. But Lacey would like to know if there's any way that her school could help support you.
You want to take this one, Kate?
Gosh, this is a tough one. We get this a lot. A lot of people want to support us by giving us supplies, which we love and is so generous. It's also tough because the Kenyan government is not kind to organizations bringing things across their border. And it's actually quite expensive because they tax them really high if you are transparent about everything you're bringing. Really, the answer to that is funds to support the Team Angaza's work, and the organizations like Together Women Rise are incredibly important partners to us. But we also at a larger level, but we also do have donors at all levels, and really, small amounts go such a long way. And I always want to answer that question differently because I think things other than money sometimes are more meaningful for people when they can bring, something like donate toys or school supplies. But the sad reality is Kayce and I have to cart them over ourselves, and they're expensive, and we can buy them and support the local Kenyan economy better by buying anything there. Yeah, like
we've created a young ambassador program that I don't know what age group your boys are, but it's really geared towards kind of middle school to high school students that we'd be happy to share. And it just because we've had local girls, we haven't had any boys yet, but that would be super cool. That they've done bake sales, they've done different types of fundraising, like at their schools to support our work, and then learn more about the work and the issues that we work around.
And many of them, and to add on to that, many of them have ended up using those as school projects, and even pretty significant ones. When they're in high school, one girl actually came to Kenya because she was doing a research project. And some of them have used their ambassador work with us, who've really been with us over the years on their college application resumes, because they've done substantial amount of work in their community at community events, raising awareness, not just about our organization, but about the issues that affect girls, across the world at their ages. They've really been energized by that. And it's really been, the really neat thing is, one of Kayce's goals when we started this organization was to also empower girls in our communities And when we started, especially, we had a really active group, and it was amazing to watch them kind of co-journey along this empowerment in a different way. So yeah, it would be so awesome to have some boys get involved, because we need that so much.
Thank you
Definitely
so much.
be allies in this type of work for sure. So Lacey, maybe I'll reach out to you and try to also connect you with Kate and Kayce. So thank you for what you're doing to try to gender equity with the boys at your school. That's awesome. All right, next question. You mentioned that your day schools are less expensive than boarding schools. What is the cost of attending one of your schools? And you mentioned mothers raising money for their daughters to go to college. Are there government colleges and universities, and what would they cost to attend?
Yeah, so for boarding school, the cost is around $400 for a year. So by our standard, it's not much. For them, it's pretty significant. The Maasai have very large families, so sending multiple children to a boarding school is really expensive. For our day schools, it's closer to $100, and there's no travel fees. Travel is a big expense as well, getting them to Narak or wherever their school happens to be. So the schools, and I should say they're government schools, the schools that we work with the communities to establish, they receive government funding, and government teachers and all of that. So we don't set fees or anything like that, but they cost for the year, they are about $100 for the secondary school. For the primary schools, they're closer to about $40 for the year per child. And then for university, they run about 2,000. It depends, of course, on the university. There are government run universities, there's private universities as well. But I would say, and again, it depends on where you rank. They really, like most of the grants are based on performance. So they take a test. But if you were to just pay out of pocket without receiving any grants, around $2,000, I'd say would be an average.
Great, thank you. So the last question is mine. Both of you are fantastic storytellers. I'd like you to share how you got involved in this work. And Kayce, you co-founded this organization. How did this come about?
Thank you. It was really kind of an unintentional side project. So my background in education, my formal education is in ecology and evolution. So I was finishing up a postdoc in that, and kind of at some crossroads deciding whether I wanted to stay in academia or move into, kind of more of an applied conservation field, when a neighbor asked if I would sew sanitary pads for some girls in Kenya. She'd been on a dental mission, and, but what she came back with was really that the girls needed sanitary pads. And this just kind of blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, like this is still an issue. I can't believe there's girls where it's affecting the trajectory of their lives because they don't have access to something this simple. And I happen to have one of my best friends from college had a cloth diaper company. And so I was like, well, we can put this together. Let's get some sanitary pads made in bulk. We can take them over there. I reached out to the person that there was another person that was organizing a pad project in Kenya, in this region, Chogoria. I reached out to her. She was a professor at North Dakota State working with adolescent girls on sexual and reproductive health. So we kind of combined forces. I brought in these mass-produced sanitary pads from a friend that was making cloth diapers, and we took them over there, and that was kind of an entry point to being able to talk to girls about, we could give them the pads, which would actually keep them in school. And then we could talk to them about sexual and reproductive health at the same time. And then we worked in that space kind of exclusively for 2-3 years. And then we just realized kind of, when you start peeling an onion, like there's so many layers, there's so many things. And we ended up expanding our work into Maasai land, into Loita and Naikarra. And yeah, that's kind of how I ended up here. And now ecology, and I still love it. And I love the field work, and I miss the field work, but I'm so grateful that I happened to find this, and it's been incredibly challenging and fulfilling. Oh, Wendy, you're muted.
Okay. Let's see, for myself, thank you for your kind comment, Wendy. Professionally, I'm trained as a photojournalist and spent a good chunk of my professional life telling stories. And I used to work for quite a lot of different NGOs. And then in the summers, I photographed a wedding to help pay for my documentary work. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the weddings I photographed was Kayce and her husband Cars about 22 years ago. And then after spending most of my life as a freelancer, I was in a desk-bound day job for 6 years, and it was a wonderful cause. I loved the difference we were making. It was for colleges and our mountain communities in Colorado, but it's a difficult culture shift for me, and I was really missing my international work. And I literally one day, Kayce and I are both trail runners, and the college I was working in was in the community where she ended up after her PhD. And we literally ran across each other one evening on the trail, and I asked what she was up to, and she was just starting For the Good. So I volunteered my services to photograph, and that grew into volunteering to do the website and graphic design and then fundraising. And I still had my day job for about 3 years, and I was just working pro bono after hours and on the weekend for the Good, because I was so passionate about what Kayce was doing, and because pretty much what Kayce starts, I know is gonna have a lot of integrity and go far, and I just love working with her. And so then I transitioned finally once we got big enough to, be able to hire someone else other than Kayce part-time in 2017, 2018. And so that's how I got involved.
Well, I'm assuming that all those photos that were in the video are yours, and they are absolutely gorgeous. So you certainly are bringing your talents to the work. And as I say, you're both great storytellers and representatives of the work you're doing. I think everyone, although we have funded similar type projects, I think we all learned even more tonight from your sharing. So Sarah, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, audience, for your questions. They're wonderful. And thank you especially to our guest speakers, Kayce and Kate, for joining us tonight and sharing their inspiring work with For the Good. And before we sign off tonight, I want to share a few more announcements before we close. So we're kicking off our annual appeal today. This is our most ambitious annual appeal in the history of ever, because we've had an unprecedented global crisis for women and girls. And we received over 600 applications this year, which is 3 times our usual number. So this is evidence that the impact that we're having right now as funding for women and girls internationally is being cut, unfortunately, that we're seeing a huge amount of need for it. And so we're trying to step up. And our goal this year is to raise $800,000 so that we can fund not only our usual 12 grants throughout the year, but we're also planning on trying to do 6 more extra grants. But we're only able to do that if we're successful in our annual appeal. So please make a donation, and Wendy should be putting it in the chat. Otherwise, feel free to use this QR code up here in my or Wendy's background. But yeah, your donation starting today and through the end of the month will be doubled. We have a very generous donor who's giving us a match of $100,000. So every gift that we get up to that amount is going to be matched. So if you give today through the end of October, it's going to be doubled, which is huge. So thank you, and thank you to the donor who gave us that wonderful matching gift. Also wanted to highlight a few upcoming events really quick. Our next monthly webinar is the first Thursday of next month, November 6th. We also are in International Day of the Girl period. So we've got an event in Alexandria, Virginia this weekend on Saturday. So if you're in the area, please show up and attend. We're going to have Beverly there and our co-founder, Barb Collins, and a bunch of incredible speakers. It's a great way to meet people. And we're going to have some performances and a former grantee there. So it'll be awesome. We're also having a virtual event next week on Tuesday with Nicholas Kristof, who's a New York Times and Pulitzer Prize winning journalist who's going to be talking about his book that just came out, Chasing Hope. And we're talking about the role of boys and men in supporting gender equality. So it'll be an excellent conversation. It's free. You can go onto our website and sign up for it. And we also have a book club coming up in November with How Beautiful We Were by Mbola Mbue. So check out our events page. And if you're also interested in traveling with us next year, we've got 2 spots remaining for our Uganda trip next June. So make sure you sign up because the spots are filling up really fast, but just go to our travel page and we have all the information there. So thank you again, everybody, for coming out tonight. This was an incredible program, and thank you to our guest speakers and to Wendy for filling in tonight. We appreciate you coming and everyone who was here and asking wonderful questions and just spending time with us. So thank you for everything. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.